There is a place the ancient world feared more than death itself, not because of fire, not because of demons, but because of silence, because of waiting, because of a darkness so complete that even time forgets to move inside it. The ancient Hebrews called it Sheol. They whispered the name. They built entire theologies around the terror of descending into it. But what they wrote in the scriptures most people read today is only a fraction of what was actually known. Because somewhere in the highlands of Ethiopia, preserved in ancient monasteries, copied by hand across centuries, guarded by priests who understood that some truths are dangerous, there exists a version of the story that goes much further. A text that was once read by the earliest followers of the faith. A book that was quoted in the New Testament itself. A vision received by the oldest prophet the Bible ever names. The Book of Enoch. And what it describes about where souls go after death will quietly rearrange something inside you. Most people understand death as a destination. You live, you die, you go somewhere. Heaven or hell, light or darkness. That binary understanding feels clean. It feels manageable. But the ancient world did not think in binaries. They thought in layers. They thought in chambers. They thought in a geography of the unseen world so detailed, so precise, that it reads less like theology and more like a map drawn by someone who had actually been there. Enoch had been there. According to the text that bears his name, Enoch was taken, lifted, carried through realms that no living human was meant to witness. He walked through fire that did not burn. He stood before mountains that moved like water. He saw the foundations of the world from beneath them. And in that journey, he was shown the place where the souls of the dead were gathered. The place that existed before heaven was filled and before judgment had come. The holding place. The waiting room at the edge of eternity. And what he saw did not resemble anything simple. Sheol, in the most common biblical understanding, is translated as the grave. A shadowy underworld, a place of the dead. Most modern readers skim past those references without pausing, because the word has been flattened by centuries of translation and theological revision. But in the original Hebrew imagination, Sheol was not a metaphor. It was a place with a location, with dimensions, with an interior architecture that the living could only glimpse through prophecy and vision. The Book of Enoch does not skim past it. In the section scholars call the Book of the Watchers, Enoch is led by the angel Raphael to the far edges of the earth, to a place where the mountains of the dead rise against a darkness that has no stars. And there, carved into the earth itself, he sees it, not a single pit, not a single shadow, but 4 hollow places, 4 chambers, separated by a fountain of bright water flowing through the darkness, each one holding a different category of the dead. 4 chambers, and the difference between them is not random. The first chamber Enoch sees is filled with a light that does not belong to this world. The souls inside it are at rest. There is no description of suffering, no description of torment, just waiting. But it is a waiting that is peaceful. These are the righteous, the ones who lived and died in faithfulness, who have not yet received their final reward but who are preserved in a state of quiet dignity, held in the earth's deep places until the day of judgment makes the final separation permanent. But then, the vision shifts. The second chamber is different. It is darker, not completely without light, but the light that exists there is cold and distant. The souls here are described as crying out, not screaming but lamenting, because they can see, somehow, across the divide. They can sense what they are separated from. These are not the worst of the dead. They are simply the ordinary dead who lived without righteousness, without catastrophic evil, but without devotion either. The weight of that neutrality, in this vision, carries its own kind of consequence, a longing, a hollow awareness of something they can no longer reach. And then comes the third chamber. This is where the text becomes something else entirely. The third chamber holds the souls of those who were slain, specifically those who were murdered. And the description Enoch gives is startling. Their souls are not passive, they are not resigned. They are crying out with a loud voice, making petition, making accusation against those who spilled their blood. The text says their blood cries out from within those walls. They are waiting, not in peace, not in quiet sorrow, but in righteous fury, demanding that justice be served before the final day arrives. This connects to something ancient, something that runs beneath the surface of the entire biblical narrative, the idea that blood speaks, that the innocent dead are not merely gone, but are actively present in another dimension, witnesses to injustice, participants in a cosmic legal process that moves in ways invisible to the living. Abel's blood cried out from the ground. Now, in Enoch's vision, that cry is given an address. It rises from the third chamber of Sheol, from the hollows of the earth, from a place where the murdered wait for the one thing they were denied in life, the one thing all suffering beings eventually reach for. Vindication, the fourth chamber, is the one the text speaks of with the heaviest weight. It holds the souls of the wicked, those who in their lives brought deliberate destruction, who chose violence and corruption, not from weakness, but from design. The description of this chamber does not give detailed torment. It does not list specific punishments. What it offers is something almost worse than a description of suffering. It offers finality. These souls are not crying out. They are not petitioning. There is no sense of waiting in hope. The text implies a separation so complete, so settled, that even the act of lamentation has been silenced. There is a word for that silence. It is not peace. It is not rest. It is the silence of something that has become fixed, something that no longer moves toward anything. Enoch is shaken by what he sees. Even as a prophet, even as a man who has already witnessed the fall of the watchers, the corruption of the earth, the cosmic machinery of divine judgment, he is shaken. Because what he sees in these four chambers is not cruel. It is not theatrical. It is simply true. And truth, when it is large enough, does not need drama to be terrifying. Now here is where the Ethiopian tradition carries something the Western world largely abandoned. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church is the oldest continuously practicing Christian church on earth. It never went through Rome. It never passed through the Reformation. It preserved texts that the Council of Laodicea quietly set aside in the 4th century, texts that had circulated freely among the earliest believers, texts that Paul knew, that Jude quoted directly, that the community at Qumran kept in multiple copies in caves by the Dead Sea, and chief among those texts is 1 Enoch. In Ethiopia, 1 Enoch is not a controversial pseudepigraphal curiosity. It is canon. It sits in the Ge'ez Bible alongside Genesis and Psalms and the Gospel of John. Monks in the monasteries of Lake Tana have chanted its verses for over 1,000 years. It is not hidden. It is not esoteric. It is simply part of what they understand the scripture to be. And because of that, the Ethiopian theological understanding of what happens after death is richer and more layered than what most of the modern world inherited. They did not receive the simplified version. They received the full map. But here is the deeper question, the one that the map forces you to confront. If Sheol is a waiting place, if the dead are held in these chambers, separated by character, by consequence, by the nature of what they did with the life they were given, then what are they waiting for? The Book of Enoch is specific. They are waiting for the great day. The day of judgment that runs through the entire prophetic tradition like a current beneath the surface. The day when the temporary arrangement of Sheol gives way to something permanent. When the chambers are unsealed. When the righteous are moved from waiting into full presence. When the wicked receive what their silence already anticipates. When the murdered look into the face of the justice they cried out for and find it completely and irrevocably done. This is not a small idea. This is an idea that changes how you think about every death you have ever witnessed. every grave you have ever stood beside, every moment of grief where the silence of the ground felt absolute and final. Because, according to this vision, the silence is not absence. The silence is the surface of something still happening. Something that has its own sound in another register. Something that moves in another kind of time. The dead are not finished. There is a passage in the Book of Enoch that most people have never encountered. It comes after the vision of the chambers, after Enoch has absorbed the weight of what he has seen. He asks Raphael why the souls of sinners are made to suffer and wait and not be immediately condemned, and the angel's answer is one of the most profound things written in the ancient world. He says, in effect, that this is mercy, that the waiting itself is the space in which the full accounting can be made. That judgment rendered instantly would be judgment rendered without the complete record. The fullness of consequence requires time even in the afterlife. The architecture of Sheol is not punishment, it is preparation. It is the necessary structure that makes final justice possible rather than merely reactive. Think about what that means. Even the darkness of Sheol is a form of patience. Even the silence of the wicked chambers is a form of deliberateness. The God that Enoch encounters in these visions is not impulsive, not reactive, not temperamental, but absolutely certain, moving with the slow, irreversible confidence of something that knows exactly where it is going and has never once been in a hurry. That is either the most terrifying thing you have ever encountered or the most comforting, possibly both. And now you have to ask yourself the question that this vision was always, ultimately, designed to produce. Not an intellectual question, not a theological puzzle, a personal one. If you imagine the chamber not as a concept, not as a metaphor, but as an actual place, and if you imagine your own soul arriving there, descending into the deep places of the earth to wait which chamber holds space for you. That is not a comfortable question. It is not meant to be. The Book of Enoch was not written to comfort, it was written to clarify, to strip away the comfortable distance between belief and consequence, to make the invisible visible, if only for a moment, if only enough to change something in the way you move through your days. Because here is what the ancient world understood that we have mostly forgotten. The way you live is the architecture of where you wait. Every choice you make in the breathing world is a kind of construction. Every act of compassion or cruelty, every moment of honest reckoning or deliberate evasion, every time you chose the harder right thing or the easier wrong one, all of it is material. All of it builds something. And what it builds is not only visible in this life. The Ethiopian monks who preserved this text for centuries were not doing it for scholarship. They were doing it because they believed it mattered, because they understood that a people who forget what death holds will be a people who forget how to live. That without a clear vision of what waits beyond the surface of the ground becomes the only thing that matters. And when the surface is all that matters, then power and pleasure and escape become the highest goods. And that is when the world begins to look like it does now. The ancient vision offered an alternative, a world with depth, a world where the dead are present, where blood cries out and is heard, where waiting is not the same as ending, where the architecture of consequence is built slowly, carefully, and completely, where nothing is lost, not even the souls in the silent chambers, not even the ones crying out in righteous fury, not even the ones resting in the cold light of the second place, filled with a longing they can no longer name but cannot stop feeling. All of them held, all of them waiting, all of them part of a story that has not reached its final chapter. There is something that lives in the space between death and judgment. The ancient Ethiopians knew it. Enoch was shown it. And buried in the oldest scriptures of the oldest church on earth, its description waits just as the souls wait for someone to come close enough to read it with the full weight of their attention. This is what was written. This is what was preserved. This is what was almost lost. And the only question worth sitting with now, in the quiet after these words have moved through you, is what you are going to do with the knowledge that the silence beneath the ground is not silence at all.